am I always sick? Let's talk about color grading. Hey everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. If you're new here, my name's Jay, and if you're into things like video editing tutorials, gear reviews, and vlogs, then make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit that bell so you can get notified whenever I upload a video. This is week 3 in our 6-week series on editing in Davinci Resolve. If you missed the first 2 parts and you don't know how to set up a project or edit a timeline in Davinci Resolve, I have the playlist linked below in the description. Make sure you click on that, watch those first 2 videos, and then come back here. This week we're talking about color grading, and I'm not gonna go through and show you the entire, like every single little nitty gritty detail when it comes to color grading, because honestly that would take forever, and again, you don't have enough time to watch that. I don't have enough time to make it, so I'm just gonna show you the basics, the basic, like kind of bare minimum things that I do in order to get my videos ready to be exported. We're gonna go over things like basic color correction and grouping and contrast and temperature, and also how to apply LUTs and vignettes. We'll also talk about how to stabilize your footage, because warp stabilizer is actually located in the color tab in Davinci Resolve. So now that you know what you're in for, let's dive in. Okay, so here we are in the color tab. This is where all the work that we're doing today is going to be. Quick rundown of the layout. Over here, we have our gallery where we can keep all our stills. We'll go over that in a little bit. We can click on the LUTs icon to see all of our LUTs. As you can see, I have a bunch. We have our media pool just like in our other tabs. And then over here, this little icon, I can toggle my timeline on and off. If you see I click it, the timeline shows up. If I click it again, the timeline goes away. Over to the right of that, we have our playback monitor. To the right of that, we have all our nodes. For those of you who are used to editing in Premiere Pro, nodes are basically adjustment layers. So for the purposes of color grading, we're not gonna wanna do everything in the same node. In fact, we're only gonna do maybe 1 or 2 things per node. Over here in the top right, we can toggle our clips on and off, toggle our nodes on and off, open up our effects, and we can open up a light box that'll show us all of the clips that are in our timeline. Moving on to the bottom left, we got a bunch of cool stuff here. We have our color wheels. Right now it's set to primary bars. We're gonna set that back to primary wheels. We have our middle section, which has curves and qualifiers, and our windows and our tracker and stabilizer, blurring and sharpening, keying, all sorts of lovely little goodies that we're going to be taking full advantage of. And then over here in the far right, you have a choice of either looking at your keyframes or your waveforms. I typically keep it on waveforms. Alternatively, if you want a pop-out window with your waveforms, you can right-click on your playback monitor and hit Show Scopes, and your waveform will pop out, and you'll be looking at your scopes. Let's go ahead and close that out and go back to waveform. So the first thing we're gonna do is color correcting. A lot of people get color correcting and color grading confused. They think it's basically the same thing, and it's not. Color correcting is making sure that your blacks are black, your whites are white, your colors are balanced, your blacks and your whites and your highlights and your shadows are at the levels that they need to be, and all that stuff. It's basically your base coat of paint. This is your primer. Now you can either do color correcting manually, or you can have Davinci Resolve do it automatically. I typically do it manually because I know I can get the result that I want. Sometimes when I hit auto, it doesn't come out quite right, but I'm gonna show you how to do both of them right now. So the first thing that we're gonna do is automatically color correct this first image here. We're gonna make sure that this node is selected. We're gonna come down here to the bottom left, that little A icon, we're gonna click on that. That's gonna bring up our qualifiers. We're gonna click on it again, and there it goes. And in this case, the auto didn't do that bad. For some reason, whenever it's a scene like this where I'm just looking at you guys sitting at my desk talking to the camera, it gets all weird. Okay, let's click over to the next clip in our timeline. I'll show you how to manually color correct your footage. So the first thing we want to do is set our black points and our white points. So what we're going to do, we're going to use the grill of this car as our black point. So I just need to zoom into that a little bit. We're gonna click this little target next to where it says lift, and we're gonna click on the grill of that car. By the way, lift is your shadows, gamma is your midtones, and gain are your highlights. Next, we're gonna set our white point, and much like the same, we're gonna go over to gain, and we're gonna hit the target next to the gain, and we're gonna choose the snow as our white point. And that actually looks pretty good to me. Okay, let's move over to the next clip so I can show you how to go full manual and completely control your color correction. Let's go to a point where it's not blurry and everything that's being shown in the clip is going to be shown. If we look over here in the waveform, we can see that my highlights are way out of control. My blacks are fairly decent, but I want to bring them up just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is come over here to the lift wheel. You have your color wheel where you can change the tint of the shadows and the blacks. And then you also have an exposure dial down here in the bottom. And we can go ahead and just drag that to the right a little bit to bring up those blacks even more. We're gonna come over here to gain, and we wanna bring these way down, probably to just below that 896 line. Maybe bring the midtones up just a little bit, bring those blacks down a little bit more, drop the highlights a couple notches. And let's see what we have for our actual color balance. We're gonna move from the waveform over to the parade. And what we're looking for in the parade is for all three of these colors, the red, the green, and the blue, to be fairly balanced and be fairly at the same levels. And as you can see here, it is. There's a little bit less blue in those midtones than there are green and red, but for the most part, that is a fairly even parade, and I'm actually very happy with that. So we're gonna leave that as it is. If you did want to change the color balance of this at all, then what you would do is take a look and see where the unevenness is. For me, if it was anything, it would be in the midtones. I'd probably want to bring up the blue just a little bit in the midtones. Gonna go to primaries bars. We're gonna go over to gamma, and we can just lift those blues a little bit, just drag those up. And if we come back over here to our parade, that actually looks really good. If you have any questions about color correcting and how to use the color wheels, just leave me a comment down below, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. And just for the purposes of time, I'm gonna go ahead and auto correct the rest of these clips. And now we're ready for color grading. Now, where color correcting was making sure that your blacks and your whites and your shadows and your highlights were all at the right levels, and that your whites were white and your blacks were black and all of that good stuff. Color grading is where we can put more of a creative look on everything. And to do this, we're gonna use a couple different methods. First, let's talk about grouping. In Davinci Resolve, you have the ability to put different clips into a group. So that way, when you do a color correction or a color grading, it can actually move across all of those clips. There's no copy and pasting attributes or anything like that. It's literally just you do the color correction or the color grading, and every clip in that group is affected. And to create a new group, it's actually really easy. You just need to select 2 or more clips, right click, hit add into new group, give that group a name. We'll just call this main, and hit OK. And when you see this little link icon below the clip, you know that it's part of that group. Now, I like keeping everything consistent throughout my videos, unless it's like a flashback or something and I want those clips to be in black and white. Everything's pretty much gonna have the same grade applied to it. So I'm gonna go ahead and select all these other clips, click add into current group, and now all of these are in the same group. Now up here in the nodes section, we're gonna switch this from clip to group post clip. If you were color correcting in groups, then you would do all of the correcting in group pre-clip and then all of the grading in group post-clip. Are you guys following along? I got a poll up here. Let me know if you're following along so far. Now this next thing I'm gonna show you is super cool. It's kind of like an instant cinematic look. I'm gonna do a separate tutorial on this at some point, but for now, if you guys want a really quick color grade on your footage, I'm gonna show you something really cool. So one of the staples of the cinematic look is having desaturated blacks and whites and saturated midtones. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna add a new node here because this is one of the last things that we do. We're gonna go ahead, go over to our curves. We're gonna move over to Luma versus saturation. And in this particular curve, in the Luma versus saturation curve, you can change the saturation of your shadows or your highlights or your midtones. You can get really accurate with your saturation points. And it's actually, it's my favorite curve to use, to be honest. So a really quick color grade that I like to do, and I do this in pretty much all of my videos now, is I go over to the left side of this curve, which is my shadows, my blacks. I take this point all the way to the left, I drag it all the way down to desaturate all of my shadows and blacks. I then add a new point in the middle of the curve, and I drag that all the way up. And now as we look through all our clips, we can see that our midtones are nice and saturated, but our blacks are still black, our whites are still white. And that looks already really nice. And to be honest, you could probably export this as is and people would give you compliments on your color. I mean, it's happened to me. I've done this. I've made it to where that was the only bit of color grading I did on a video, and I put the video out and people were like, wow, the color in this is great. It's cool. So like, this is really nice, but I want to take it just a little bit further. So while part of that cinematic look is having desaturated blacks, we do want to have a little bit of color in those shadows, specifically a blue tint. We want it to be actually teal, which is the opposite of what our natural skin tone is. This is where that whole teal and orange look comes from. It's opposite colors. Your skin tones are naturally orange, and so we want to actually put a contrasting color in the shadows, which in this case would be teal. So what we want to do first is make sure that that first node is selected. This is where the grade is going to be. We're going to go over here above our playback monitor. We're going to click this little magic wand. And what that magic wand is going to do is it's going to show us only the parts of the clip that we're grading. Come down here to that middle section, hit the little eyedropper, which is your qualifier. We're gonna uncheck hue, we're gonna uncheck saturation. Let's actually move to a clip that's a little bit more contrasted. That looks good. We're gonna take this luminance slider and we're gonna shrink it down. And you can see that only the shadows now are showing up in the picture. We want to even that out just a little bit, so we're going to go ahead down here where it says H soft. We're just going to click and drag that up to smoothen that out. And then we're going to come over here to offset. We're going to drag that towards the blue. Let's see what that looks like by unchecking that magic wand. Let's go ahead and scroll through our clips, and I can see here that that's just a little bit too much. So what I want to do now is come over to our key, come down to qualifier. I'm going to bring that down to 0.5. That evens things out a lot more. And now you have a basic color grade. You can go on and tweak it a little bit more, maybe add some more warmth to the midtones, change up the skin color a little bit. You can change the saturation in certain colors. I like to do that sometimes when I'm out in parks. I'll select the greens and I'll oversaturate those to make them really pop. But you can do whatever you want. But that right there is a basic color grade. You can honestly just go out, export it like that, save it as a LUT, reuse it in your other footage, and all that stuff. In fact, let me show you how to save a color grade as a LUT for later use right now. So let's say that you have made the perfect color grade. You made a video and the color grading was perfect. You want to make every video you have look like that. You don't want to have to go through the whole process ever again. It's super easy. Just go down here to the clip and you're gonna go to Generate 3D LUT Cube. It's gonna ask you to name it. I'm just gonna call this Tutorial LUT. Hit save. And now you've got a LUT for future use. All right, just a few more things to show you guys how to use a LUT, how to add a vignette, and how to stabilize footage. And to do all of this, the first thing that I want to do is actually just reset all of my nodes and all of my grades. So we're in group post clip. We're just going to right click in the node section, reset all grades and nodes, go back to clip, going to highlight all of my clips, right click in the node section, reset all grades and nodes. And now my footage is back to looking the way it looked before we ever did any color grading, straight out of the camera. Now let's talk about how to apply a LUT to your footage. Now, more times than not, you're gonna wanna do your color correcting before you apply the LUT. A LUT is not a replacement for color correcting. Sometimes, especially if you're a YouTuber and you're pumping out content really fast, you may wanna start with the LUT and just adjust your levels from there and do any other adjustments from there. That's what we're gonna do right now. So since we're applying our LUT to our entire timeline, all we're gonna wanna do is come over here to group post clip. Gonna come over here, make sure LUTs is selected. We're gonna go to whatever LUT folder you want to go into. For this tutorial, we're gonna go into my own LUTs. And to preview a LUT, all you wanna do is hold your cursor over the thumbnail and it will show you what your footage will look like after the LUT is applied. And here's the one that we made earlier. Go ahead and drag that onto the node, and there you have it. And from there, like I said, you can adjust your highlights, your whites, your shadows, your blacks. You can change the coloring and tweak it so it looks how you want it to look. You can, the sky's the limit. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is how to add a vignette. And there's a fine balance with a vignette. You don't want to make it so dark that it's super noticeable. You just want to bring focus to the center of your frame, which is 9 times out of 10 where your subject is going to be. And to add this vignette, we're just going to use a little window. It's really easy to do. Let's take a look. So to add a vignette, first thing we're going to do is hit Alt S to add another node. We're going to come over here to our windows. We're going to choose a circular window. And we're going to click this little icon over here to the right. And that little icon tells Davinci that all of the grading that we're going to do is going to be on the outside of that circle rather than the inside of that circle. We're going to go ahead and reshape this circle so the window covers our entire clip. Then we're going to come down here to where it says softness, soft 1. We're going to drag that until the outer line of that circle is lined up with the corners of your frame. And then from there, we're just gonna go to offset and we're gonna drag the exposure dial down. I'm gonna come down here to this drop down menu, turn that window off. Then let's see what that looks like. Hit Control S to save. We're gonna hit Control D to get rid of that vignette. See how strong that is, how noticeable that is? We actually want to bring that way, way up. And that looks good. Now, one quick tip when you are color grading for hours on end and you're looking at footage and you're making a bunch of changes, sometimes it's hard to remember how far you came and how much work you've actually done on these clips. So in order to see that, in order to see all of the work you've done, all you want to do is hit Alt D, and that'll deactivate all of your nodes and all of your grades so you can see the footage as it was when it came straight out of the camera. Hit Alt D again to reactivate those nodes, and you can see all of the work that we've done. All right, last thing I'm going to show you is how to stabilize your footage. This is actually really easy. Davinci has 3 different methods of stabilizing footage. I cannot tell you the difference between the 3. I don't know what each of them does. I'm sure there are plenty of people who know, but really all I'm going to tell you is that knowing what they do doesn't really matter. You just want to kind of choose trial and error and figure out which method of stabilization works the best for the footage that you have. Now, we never want to stabilize an entire timeline or entire group of clips. This is done on an individual clip basis. So we're going to go down here to clip, going to go ahead and add a new node. Going to come down here to tracking and stabilizing. Over here where it says window, going to go to stabilizer. Down here in the bottom right, you have 3 different forms of stabilization: perspective, similarity, and translation. I always choose perspective first, and we're really only stabilizing our B-roll clips. Go ahead and click this first one, hit stabilize. That's pretty quick. That looks like it didn't do much at all. Go ahead and play that. That was pretty smooth. Go to the next clip, hit stabilize, and that's pretty good. And here's what the timeline looks like after color grading. All right, gotta go work for my neighbor real quick. Then I got a meeting with a potential client. It's a busy day. Busy day. All right, let's go. So, how I became a full-time YouTuber. Most of you guys know that I was an electrician. That was my career. I was in that career for about 15 years with the exception of a 4-year hiatus, which I'll get into in a minute. All right, we're getting there. We're getting there. We have set up our project. We've put our timeline together. We have color graded our footage. Next is effects. We're gonna do some special effects, nothing too fancy. We're just gonna add some artificial whip pans, maybe some crossfades, who knows. Sky's the limit. We'll just do whatever comes to the top of our mind. So like this video if you enjoyed it, share it if you think your friends will enjoy it, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell if you haven't done so already. I will be back Monday for a brand new vlog. But until then, thanks for hanging out, and I'll talk to you later. See ya.